Welcome to the CURES Show, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. I'm Kara Sundlin. We want to thank the Center for Advanced Reproductive Services for sponsoring this episode. It is a new year. Happy New Year, everyone. So why not work on a new brain? There's been some exciting revelations in brain health in 2022, and we're going to explore the top 5 things we've learned about brain health to reduce risk of dementia, other things like Alzheimer's. The Director of Communications, Kristen Cusado from the Alzheimer's Association in Connecticut, is joining us. Thanks for being with us, Kristen.
Hello, Kara. Happy New Year.
Yeah, we're excited to hear this because I think everyone's in a mode of let's do something. And we know everyone's got lots of resolutions. So often it's about losing weight. But the one thing we don't want to lose is any memory or brain health. So let's start with something simple. Your new research shows taking a daily multivitamin can actually slow down aging in the brain?
Yes, and there have not been a number of studies, right? We know that supplements are not typically covered by the FDA, which means that they didn't go through extensive studies. But this is a study to kind of look at this cognition multivitamin connection. It was a 3-year study, and it was about 2,000 folks, average age about 73, and they took a daily multivitamin, and it resulted in significant cognitive benefit. So not that Alzheimer's Association is saying, run out and get them. Always talk to your doctor right before you start anything new. But it's interesting because the study was looking at a cocoa extract and a vitamin. They were thinking that the cocoa extract would show more, but it was actually the multivitamin. And they did different cognitive tests along the way to check. And it's just kind of exciting because it's just looking at, another thing that maybe we could do now to help reduce our risk.
Right, because so much of it is, early detection or early prevention, and we don't always know exactly. There's not this easy blood test. Oh, you've got dementia. It's all these other things. I do want to just chime in here that you can go back and look at a lot of the CURES episodes where we've dealt with some of our top naturopaths here in Connecticut. We are so lucky. We have such really intelligent, integrative doctors here, from Dr. Artemis Morris at the Artemis Wellness Center to Dr. Jennifer Stagg, and all of them advocate a multivitamin. And as much as one community will say, oh, there's not studies, if you talk to the integrative naturopathic community, they'll say there absolutely is studies, unless you live in a perfect world where you're eating a perfect diet and the soil is really rich and, and you're living in a blue zone, which most of us are living American lives that tend to be lacking in some of our vitamins and minerals. So I guess it can't hurt. I take one every day, and I have to say I do notice when I'm not taking it. I don't have as much energy, and sometimes I feel more brain fog. So just my own little, I'm glad that something's supporting it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Something else that we can do for low-hanging fruit here, the research found on the reverse, eating too many processed foods like frozen pizza can actually cause your brain to age faster and put you at a greater risk for memory issues.
Yeah, and what are those ultra-processed foods? Oh, all the delightful things, the things that we love, right? The ice cream, the frozen pizza, which made me sad because I have frozen pizza in my freezer all the time for that last minute meal, the soda, the fast food. And this actually came out of AAIC, which is our Alzheimer's Association International Conference. And that's held at the end of July into August every year. And it is bringing together 6,000 to 10,000 of the best scientific minds across the world. So that conference comes out with a lot of great stuff. And this was one of them. We know that we shouldn't, spend a lot of time in the drive-through, right? We know that that's not a great idea. But this has actually showed that if your diet is made up of more than 20% of ultra-processed foods, you have a 30% increased risk of cognitive decline. Wow. And that's holy cow, 20 to 30. And you're like, let me look at what I eat in a day and how much of it is processed. So it's just really another reason to kind of take a look at how you're spreading out the protein, how much of that stuff is coming from cans and just, super processed situation. But we also have the issue of, Karen, we know this, a lot of people live in food deserts. A lot of people don't have access to the fresh fruits and vegetables and that kind of thing. So it's how you can balance it out and how you can really do the best for your situation where you live and what you have access to.
Right, and easy to say. I know a lot of people will say, oh my gosh, it's too expensive to eat healthy. And I just want to chime in here again from so many episodes we've done that, frozen vegetables are just as good as fresh. So, getting those frozen ones can be really inexpensive and, You can microwave them. I mean, it's better than nothing. And,
Yeah.
we've also done a lot of things that people say, oh, I don't have time, but actually whole foods can be fast foods. Like there's not much anything cheaper or faster than just eating an apple and some peanut butter. That takes less time than running through the drive-thru to get a snack, right? So I think sometimes it gets in the way when we're busy. We say, oh my gosh, I don't have time, and the meal prep, and some of it seems so not doable. But if we can just one meal a day, try to eat better, and sometimes I think you save money by eating simple too. I mean, we don't exactly save money when we're going and eating takeout all the time.
Right. And just everything in moderation, right? That's always the key. And we always talk about that, especially because, like you say, in January, everyone's like, clean slate, let's start fresh, let's change our entire selves.
It's
It's
like
really hard to
one
change
step at
the
a
entire
time,
self. Change
one step
one
at a
thing.
time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and also just for those who are concerned about family members who may be already at that point, the research shows we do have better treatments in the last year or so. We're getting some better treatments for Alzheimer's.
Yeah, this is really exciting. So I would say for the past 17 to 20 years, the only medicines or medications that people took when they were diagnosed with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia were really for symptoms, really to treat the symptoms, maybe the anxiety or maybe some of the sleeplessness, those kinds of things, behavior issues. But in the 2021 in June, there was a drug called Aduhelm, which was approved by the FDA, and it was the first disease-modifying drug, meaning it went in to take away those amyloid plaques, which are one of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. And it's kind of a formulation of some things in the brain that prevents the processing and then starts taking away some of your cells. So that drug was approved. It was controversial, not covered by CMS, very expensive. Fast forward to this month in the hopes that we will have approval of a second drug that is also disease modifying called lecanemab. This is a drug which name will change if it's approved by the FDA. Again, this has even better data, showing a 27% reduction in cognitive decline. And this is for folks, Kara, with MCI, which is mild cognitive impairment, or mild Alzheimer's, which is early stage. This is
Okay.
also an infusion drug. So you need to be able to tolerate sitting there in an infusion center and having it for like an hour as an infusion.
Okay.
But this drug could be approved this month. It has better data, and the hope is that enough folks, we as the Alzheimer's Association, we're a patient advocate, organization. We want to be able to make sure that everyone has access to something like this. So our hope is that through people's stories, we can change CMS's mind and have Medicare cover these class of drugs, and therefore other insurances will follow suit.
Okay.
So
What does
even
CMS
so,
stand
just to,
for,
it's a
Kristen? Sorry.
sorry.
What does CMS mean? I just want to make sure we know
Oh,
for our viewers.
it's Center for Medicaid and Medicare, right? So it's they make the big decisions, right, about
Okay.
coverage.
Okay.
And then other smaller independent insurance companies will follow suit. So if they say we're not covering, and right now they've said we're not covering this class of drugs due to the Aduhelm decision, which some people thought was rushed by the FDA. Some people thought the data wasn't good enough. So like I said, fast forward to other drugs that have been in development for many years, and lecanemab is up. Another one in the spring is called donanemab. The MABs, if you notice, are at the end of these medications. So these are medications that are actually disease modifying. Yes, they have risks. Every single drug has a risk. And each time you get past one drug or one drug gets approved, there are better, stronger, better data drugs in the pipeline. So we're excited. We are hopeful that this drug will be approved by the FDA. And then we have to shift to really making sure there's coverage, because we believe it needs to be accessible to everyone who has this disease who wants more time. And that's what it's saying. It can give families more time together in this certain place of early symptoms.
Early symptoms. So let's talk about early detection first.
Okay.
What should people be doing if they're even concerned? I mean, you go to a physical, and at least where I go, past the age of 40, they give you an EKG, you get blood work. Is there any kind of standard looking for dementia, or is there anything you can advocate for or ask for if you're concerned, or should we be even getting a baseline?
Absolutely. There's something called a wellness check, right? So I would ask if you qualify for this kind of mental health or 10 warning signs wellness check. It's checking your cognitive decline, right? To get that baseline, to see where you are, maybe give you those tests that people you've heard of, like draw the clock, right? You've heard that maybe before, where people have to put the clock and the numbers in the right place, et
Okay.
cetera. And sometimes when you have this disease, you've got some spatial issues, you've got some number issues. So that's kind of one early indicator, maybe, that there's something going on. But I would think that getting that baseline, also learning, educating, we're big advocates for learning before you need to have the information. That way it's tucked away, right? So what are the 10 signs? What are some of the things that you should be looking at right now? And what are the things that when is it time to take those memory concerns to a doctor? I will say that a lot of people over the holidays probably saw a relative whom they haven't seen in a while, right? So did you notice any real changes in behavior? Were there issues following a recipe that they have been doing for years and years, and it's been perfect? For example, like my mom, when my mom was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, a type of dementia, at 61. And early on in the process, I don't even know if she had been diagnosed. She was asked to put like a quarter teaspoon of salt into something. She put a quarter cup, like all of it, right? So not doing the measurements right? Not following a recipe. That's one example. Were they able to set the table the way they used to? Did they kind of get lost in conversations? Did they forget the names of some, your children who came over? I'm talking like grandparents, et cetera. So there's a lot of things to think about. Did they get lost coming back from the grocery store? That's a thing, right? So taking a look at these things, taking a look at what the 10 signs are, and then realizing that, some of these things we need to go to a doctor. And if you're not sure about any of it, please call our 800 number. Our 24/7 helpline has information about everything, about where there are doctors, about what are the 10 signs, about clinical trials, about I'm stressed out because my mom is having some sort of episode. She thinks I'm her sister. What do I do? I'm her daughter.
Right,
So
right.
it's 1-800-272-3900. I'm hoping you guys can put that up. That is just so crucial. If you have any question anytime, you can call them.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that when we post this, people can find it as well. But I'll repeat that number, 1-800-272-3900. And the website is alz.org/CT. But that's good. ALZ for Alzheimer's, of course, good for, a clearinghouse if this is like, okay, I need to go do some research and check on some things. That's a great first step. But this new research, as we're talking about the 5 things that we've learned in 2022 for new year, new brain. It's not just our physical bodies. We've talked about multivitamins and good diet, but the research found mental health matters and that experiencing racism is actually linked to poor memory.
Yeah, this is really interesting. And thinking about some of the inequities right now, we know that Black African Americans are 2 times as likely to develop dementia, and Latino Hispanics are 1.5 times as likely. Some of the reasons we know is that some folks come forward with already some cardiovascular issues or some, blood pressure issues or diabetic issues, blood sugar issues, but we don't know enough. But what we are finding is that experiences of like structural or interpersonal racism associated with lower memory scores, especially among Black individuals. So looking at, why we need to increase resources, why we need to make sure that the social determinants of health, working on that, it all leads to disparities, so we really need to make sure that folks who are coming forth with these additional deficits and they already have blood sugar or blood pressure issues, need to really pay attention to these memory concerns and get themselves to a doctor. And this is also a concern for the fact that there are not a large number of doctors who speak Spanish. So it's hard. There's a lot of things that need to be built up so that people can have access and people know that they need to take their memory issues to a doctor, not just take the person in, right? In some cultures, it's like, okay, mom or dad is older and they come and they move in with us, and that's just the way it is. This is what happens. They lose their memory. Well, not everybody loses their memory. This is not a normal part of aging, and that's what we want everyone to realize.
Right, right, and that's important, right? We have to change the narrative of, you get older, senior moment, and that can happen. And honestly, my mom will joke about senior moments, but I think we all have moments. I'll call them the midlife moments when you're just doing too much. We can all forget things, right? So what's the difference between, gosh, I don't remember where my keys are, and I have something to worry about?
Well, one of the differences is exactly with keys. So I don't remember where my keys are, or I lost my keys, versus having your keys in your hand and saying, what are these for?
Mm,
Right? What do they do? Or being in the car and knowing that you have to put that thing to R or D, but which is R and which is D and what does it do?
okay.
Or seeing a light when you're driving and realizing, we know red is stop, right? But if we don't know what yellow is yellow speed up? Is yellow slow down? So things that we think as normal reactions, because they have a brain disease. It's a deteriorating brain disease.
Hmm.
Some of those cells are being killed. Some of the, like those, talk about those amyloid proteins, they're in the way of the cells and synapses talking to each other. So the processing isn't happening. So seeing a light or seeing a stop sign and processing, realizing you have to hit the brake instead of the gas, that's not all happening like it happens
Okay.
when we don't have
No,
this
that's a
kind of
really good
dementia.
analogy. Yeah, about where are my keys versus what do I do with them. If you are noticing things like that at that stage, I think the hard thing is if you're the loved one, right, and you want to have this conversation. Are most people aware at that stage that they're having some issues, or are they not aware and kind of forget that they even had that lapse?
I could say maybe it's a mix. I
Hmm.
think that some people are in denial. I think some family members are in denial. I think that some people actually go through the entire process not even acknowledging that they have the disease, which is okay, right? Because it's really about the caregivers surrounding, making sure they have a good quality of life and they are taken care of. Unless they fight going to the doctor, and that's a challenge, right? It's time to go to the doctor. Why do you need to take me to the doctor? But there are little tricks you can do, like, I'm worried about my memory. Would you accompany me, Mom? I really want to go talk to the doctor. I know, it sounds weird, but can you come with me? And then it's really for her. Right. So there are a lot of things you can do. There's a class called Dementia Conversations, how to have those conversations. Again, ALZ .org/CT. You can look up education classes, and they're all free, by the way. To like have that initial conversation about, should we talk about dad's driving? There's a lot of dings in the, a lot of dents in the early part because they have some spatial issues. So they might be, knocking into the curb a little more, or trying when my mom was trying to pull into the single car garage, that she would go a little too far and she would knock into the sides. It's kind of a visual spatial thing. It's hard
Uh,
for anyone, right? When you're driving, you're like, how far is that car from me?
right.
If you have dementia, your kind of eyesight and your vision changes a little bit. So things like that. We're concerned about your driving. That's a tough one, but having some background, know that you can call the 800 number, know that you can have a class, know that you can call your doctor and say, how do I have this conversation
Yep. Yep.
with my mom? Because I'm worried.
So another thing that happens as people get older is they might start to lose some of their hearing, and the new research shows
Mm.
that wearing hearing aids can actually reduce your risk of dementia.
That is really interesting, right? I was surprised by that too. That's kind of neat. So, a lot of folks, reducing the like 19% decrease in a long term decline, 3% improvement in cognitive test scores. So, why is it? It's very possible that, hearing loss could be associated with some social isolation. So, kind of pulling back and not having as much stimulation, which we're always, having people withdraw from social activities. And there's a big, correlation between social isolation and dementia, which was obviously a giant concern during COVID. We were hoping that everyone tried to stay as active as they could. But hearing loss, they may have allocated a lot of cognitive resources for auditory, meaning you might be using a lot of your brain to really pay attention to hear, so that some other parts of the brain aren't as um, active, right? So it could be that. So it could be like less brain cells for cognitive functioning or doing cognitive tasks you're trying so hard to hear. There are other things that are simpler. Thinking about that, you have to really pay attention and be able to read lips, right? And if you're not functioning right because you're not hearing right, that might be harder. And you're like,
Hmm.
why are they not answering my question, or why are they not answering me? That kind of thing. So there's a lot. That's kind of an early study, but I just thought it was really interesting to think about.
Yeah.
It increase that, and that's another thing why we always say folks who have dementia, make sure that they have their hearing aids and their glasses on, right? So we don't want to add to the dementia issues, right? We don't want to add to the confusion. just kind of getting them so that they can at least hear and see, what's going on around them and process at their level.
Yeah. And, right now we're talking about two things, right? What we can do at a younger age, like right now, we can take multivitamins, we can avoid the processed food, all interesting stuff. Get more sleep, right? That's not so much a new study, but lots, I know I've talked to you before, that's also low hanging fruit, is that, constant sleep deprivation and stress also has been connected with memory decline.
I think that there's a lot of things going on with sleep, right? First of all, when you have a deep sleep, it actually clears out the toxins in your brain, which I didn't know until a couple of years ago. I'm like, really? That's amazing. And then also sleep apnea, right? So, with the sudden, and you wake up a lot of times and you're having trouble breathing, right? That's also going to have an effect. So there was a study a couple of years ago that said, so improve your sleep hygiene, which I was like, wait, what does that mean? Do I have to take a shower before I go to bed? Because I shower in the morning. What does that mean? And it was like, no, do what you're supposed to be doing. Put that phone down at
Yeah.
least 30 minutes before you go to bed. You've done stuff on this. I mean,
Yeah.
all the things of not caffeine too late. Maybe you don't exercise too late. Really trying to clear your mind and doing some meditation and trying to do some deep breathing to get yourself to that sleep state. My favorite thing that I bought a couple of years ago, Kara, a white noise machine. It's my favorite.
Yeah, no, some people
My,
love that. I'm like the reverse. I have to have it silent, but I know people who
do
like
you?
can't
Okay.
sleep without the white noise. And I'll say just there's another episode. A doctor invented something called sleep phones. If you happen to be the person sleeping next to the person who snores, or you get calls. This doctor was getting calls in the middle of the night, and she'd get revved up because your cortisol goes and you can't go back to sleep. So she invented something where if you've tried to go to ever sleep with like your AirPods and then they fall out and you lose them, it's a little band. You can just Google it. They're called sleep phones, and they're very soft and they're antimicrobial and they have little Bluetooth speakers on it. And it was set for her for like meditative music, like binaural beats, which have been shown to get us into the sleep zone. So I'm just throwing that out there that if people are having issues, whether the white noise, but yeah, you're right, there's something to do with the sleep hygiene. We should really start, they say the 3-2-1, stop eating 3 hours before, stop exercising 2 hours before, stop screening 1 hour before. So, whatever works, but even just the idea that you shouldn't be using your bedroom, even if you are using your phone, but you're just reading or you're using it to play meditation music, different than you're checking your email, you're having to react to something, you're scheduling, anything that's going to bump that cortisol up and make you go, I got to get ready. Yeah.
You're still like hammering your head and your brain with all these things, right?
Yeah.
It's just constant. So being able to shut that down, and I'm so guilty of it as well. Some of my friends actually put their phones in the other room to charge overnight. I'm like, wow, good for you. I'm really proud of you. I don't know if I could do that, but
Well,
it's a great idea.
sometimes it might cause more anxiety, especially if you have like maybe an elderly parent or kids and you're like, what if someone were to, but there's lots of settings. You can put your thing on do not disturb and the VIPs will still get through if there's an emergency. So yeah, I know that feeling too of like, I'm going to sleep less if I feel like I don't know what's going on. If there's, you're worried because your child is sleeping out or your elderly loved one isn't being, all that kind of stuff. But we've also got about loving your brain in 2023. So now we've talked about some of the things you found out. As we go forward to love your brain in 2023, one of the people I love to follow on social media is Doc Amen. He's the expert in scanning brains and learning all kinds of things of what hurts cognitive decline. So I want to know, he's a great resource. I know the Alzheimer's Association is a great resource. What have we learned, if anything, about alcohol?
Oh, that is a really good question. And it's like I fed you this, but I didn't. We have a brand new person we are research funding. So we are the largest nonprofit funder of research in the world. And we're funding a bunch of people at Yale, UConn Health. And this woman at Yale, her name is Geeta Patak, and she is looking at alcohol misuse and dementia and the combination and what does it mean. So everything in moderation, alcohol, right? But if you have some sort of genetic predisposition, if you have more of the certain gene, like 2 copies of a certain gene, you're at a greater risk for, say, you and I both drinking the same amount of alcohol. If one of us has the genes, she's looking to see if that person has a greater possibility of heading right into a dementia phase or heading into an Alzheimer's situation. So some of the research that is out now talks about everything in moderation. Some of the research talks about not doing it at all. But we're really excited to hear what this Yale researcher is going to find looking at alcohol misuse and cognitive decline.
Well, we've learned a lot from COVID too, that COVID causes inflammation in the brain. So people were having uh, problems afterward of brain fog or even sudden anxiety or sudden insomnia. And it was related to, some inflammation, which we're hearing that more and more now, that we just need to bring down inflammation. And there's a lot of good resources out there. There's even a book written by a local Connecticut doctor, The Anti-Inflammatory Diet for Dummies. But as far as a general diet, like a Mediterranean diet with good olive oil and fish and fruits and taking omega-3s, I mean, anything you can do to bring down inflammation, is that something that you're finding also is just something that's going to help you love your brain and preserve it?
Absolutely. And inflammation, a big name and a big thing coming into that racism study, right? Getting hyped up and going back into this trauma and causing that inflammation, as well as, there was a study out about COVID. So back when we found out that COVID was not going to be a pack your bags and we'll see you back here in 2 weeks, right? Back in the day when we thought it was just a temporary thing, the Alzheimer's Association started this giant consortium of 40 countries really looking at COVID in the brain and what does it mean and what does it mean for cognition. And they found out some things. And one of the things they found out is absolutely that it's an inflammation issue. So they were looking at, if you had COVID and X number of months later or years later, you're still having some smell issues, that's a better indicator of if you have a dementia risk than the severity of your COVID. So if you had a really, really bad COVID, but you can still smell, that might not be as bad for you as far as dementia risk as if you still are having smell. Why? It's inflammation. Right?
Yeah.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
And it's a neurological thing, right? I had COVID, unfortunately, before all the treatments and then after, and I never lost sense of taste or smell. I never lost any weight. All these people were losing all the weight. I was like, oh, I wish I would have had that side effect. But I was also relieved that I didn't have the loss of sense or smell. So, I mean, I think it's really, we want to educate ourselves. And just as we're closing out here, we want people to go to alz.org. A lot of these top 5 things that you just talked about in the research, if you're trying to jot notes down or you're in the car or you're watching at home and going, okay, I want to follow up on this, all this information, alz.org. And also shout out the 800 number too, in case you just want to talk to a human being.
Absolutely. And this is for, hey, I have questions about my own memory or my mom, or we just got a diagnosis. Can we get a guidebook? Can you help us out here as a family for a care consultation? Or if you want to sign up for a class, or if you just have a question about anything, or if you just want to vent. 800-272-3900. 800-272-3900. It's the Alzheimer's Association free 24/7 helpline. And it's just so helpful for so many folks. There's no minimum amount or maximum amount you can call. So definitely reach out. We want everyone to know, Karen, that I've said this before, that people don't have to go through this alone. There are so many people who have been through this process. And that's why we also encourage people to join support groups. There are people in that support group who are either at where you're at or have been past it a little bit with these great ideas. You get these nuggets of advice from peers. And it's just really amazing and important to do that.
Kristen, thank you so much. You're a wealth of information. I know it's time for now, but definitely share this. If you're listening on the podcast or if you're watching on TV, we want to spread this information. So thank you, Kristen, for being here. And everyone, I hope you feel like you're more empowered to love your brain in 2023. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for being here for CURES. Have a great day and be well.